They say every marriage has two stories, the one you show the world and the one that lives inside your home. For me, the first story looked like perfection. The second, well, that truth would come later, sharp and merciless. My name is Elena, and for 3 years I believed I had built the kind of love people envy. My husband Ryan was everything I thought I wanted. Ambitious, kind when he wanted to be, with a smile that melted away every doubt. He made promises, big and small, to protect me, to cherish me, to never let me feel alone. And in the beginning, he kept them. One of the things that drew me to Ryan was how easily he fit into my family. My mother, Sophia, adored him from the moment they met. She often joked that she'd finally gotten another son, and Ryan basked in her attention like sunlight. To me, it was a blessing. After my father passed, my mother had been lonely, carrying the weight of an empty house and long nights. Having Ryan around seemed to fill that space. He would visit her even when I couldn't, help her with groceries, fix leaky faucets, share dinner at her table. At first, I thought it was sweet. I told myself, this is how family should be, supportive, close, loving. On our wedding day, my mother cried harder than anyone else. I thought it was the usual motherly tears, watching her daughter step into a new life. But looking back, I realized those tears carried something else, something I was too blind to see. Ryan looked at me as I walked down the aisle, but there was a moment, brief but sharp in memory, where his eyes drifted toward Sophia. She was radiant that day, elegant in her navy blue dress, clapping with a smile that seemed to belong to her alone. I brushed it off as nerves. After all, what groom doesn't glance around when overwhelmed? But sometimes the smallest cracks foreshadow the greatest collapse. Our first year of marriage was filled with laughter and plans. We traveled, decorated our home, stayed up late talking about children and dreams. But through it all, my mother was never far away. Ryan insisted on inviting her for dinners. He suggested we stop by her house just because. He spent hours chatting with her, sometimes without me. At first, I felt proud. I told my friends, Ryan and my mom get along so well, it's like a dream. They nodded with envy, telling me how lucky I was. But as time passed, I began to notice something unsettling. When Ryan looked at me, his gaze was warm, but ordinary. When he looked at my mother, there was a spark. Quick, almost hidden, but there. It was in the way he laughed louder at her jokes than mine. It was in the way he complimented her cooking with more enthusiasm than he ever gave my efforts. It was in the way she leaned in just a little too close when they spoke, her hand brushing his arm as though it belonged there. I ignored it all. I told myself, don't be paranoid. They're just close. It's innocent. But history has a way of repeating itself in every family. When lines blur, when boundaries fade, disaster is never far behind. Looking back, Chapter 1 of my story should have been a warning. The closeness between Ryan and Sophia wasn't normal. It was an intimacy that grew roots while I smiled on, blind to the truth. I believed I had the perfect marriage. What I really had was a perfect illusion, and illusions, no matter how beautiful, always break. Every betrayal has its foreshadowing, little fragments of truth scattered like broken glass. If you step carefully, you might avoid the cuts. But I didn't. I walked barefoot across them, convincing myself that the sting I felt was only my imagination. Ryan was always a man who liked to talk. With me, he shared plans. What color to paint the guest room, how much to save for vacation, the future we could build. But with my mother, his words took on another weight. He listened more carefully, laughed more openly, smiled more often. His eyes lit up when she entered the room, even if he'd been dull and tired a moment before. At first, I dismissed it as admiration. My mother, Sophia, was striking even in her 50s. Polished, elegant, a woman who commanded attention without asking for it. But slowly, I realized Ryan's admiration wasn't fleeting. It lingered. It began with things small enough to excuse. If I cooked dinner, Ryan would thank me with a distracted nod. If my mother cooked, he praised every bite, asking for seconds with the delight of a child. If I wore a new dress, he'd say, "You look nice." But when Sophia wore something new, his eyes followed her with unspoken awe, and he'd say, "You look incredible." Once, during a family barbecue, I noticed Sophia brushing a bit of ash from Ryan's shoulder. He laughed, too easily, and she didn't pull her hand away quickly enough. It was innocent to anyone else. To me, it felt like watching a private joke I wasn't allowed to understand. Their laughter was the worst part. One evening, I returned from the grocery store to find them sitting on the porch, laughing so hard they were nearly in tears. When I asked what was so funny, they looked at each other before answering, as if deciding whether to let me in on the secret. "It's nothing," Ryan said, shaking his head with a grin. Nothing. Always nothing. But that nothing felt heavier than any truth. I wanted to confront them. I wanted to scream, "What's going on between you two?" But the words stuck in my throat. Because what if I was wrong? What if I was only paranoid, inventing shadows where there was only light? I told myself to be grateful. I told myself I was lucky my husband cared for my mother. But at night, as I lay beside Ryan, I could feel the distance growing. His body was next to mine, but his mind was somewhere else. Someone else. Friends noticed too. At a dinner party, one of my closest friends pulled me aside. "Your husband and your mom," she whispered. "They're really close, huh?" I laughed it off, masking my unease. "Yeah, they get along well. I guess I should be thankful." But the truth gnawed at me. When outsiders begin to notice, you can no longer deny what's in front of you. One night, I woke in the middle of the night to find Ryan missing from our bed. I padded quietly through the house, my stomach twisted. He was in the kitchen with my mother, drinking tea, talking in low voices. At 2 a.m., Sophia smiled when she saw me, her expression calm. "Couldn't sleep," she said, gesturing to Ryan. "We were just keeping each other company." Ryan nodded, too quickly, as though they'd rehearsed it. I forced a smile and went back to bed, but the truth burned inside me. They didn't need to say a word. Their eyes already had. History tells us betrayal never begins with the grand act. It starts with the subtle signs, the stolen glances, the shared laughter, the small betrayals of loyalty that prepare the ground for the larger ones. I saw the signs. I felt the signs, but I let them slide, because facing the truth would have meant facing the collapse of everything I thought was real. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. There is a moment in every story of betrayal when doubt transforms into certainty. It is the moment you can no longer lie to yourself, no longer dress suspicion in the disguise of paranoia. For me, that moment came quietly, like a knife sliding between ribs, sharp, unseen, undeniable. It began with Ryan's phone. One evening while he showered, a notification flashed across the screen. My mother's name, a simple heart emoji. My hands shook as I unlocked it. The thread wasn't filled with blatant declarations of love. No, it was worse. It was layered with intimacy disguised as casual talk. Dinner was amazing last night. You always know exactly what I like. I can't sleep, thinking of our conversation earlier. You make me feel understood in a way no one else does. Each message carved deeper into my chest. Each line blurred the boundary between mother-in-law and husband, and the worst part? There were no messages like that between him and me anymore. I tried to confront Ryan that night, but fear silenced me. Instead, I watched more carefully, and then came the slip. At a family gathering, Ryan reached across the table to hand Sophia a glass of wine. Their fingers brushed, but neither pulled away. For a second too long, they held each other's gaze, a silent current running between them. Everyone else continued eating, oblivious. But I saw it. I felt it. The air between them crackled like a secret too dangerous to touch. The final blow came on a night when rain hammered against the windows, the house steeped in silence. I had gone to bed early, exhausted from the weight of my suspicions. But again, I woke to an empty space beside me. I followed the soft hum of voices down the hall and stopped just outside the living room. The door was ajar. Through the narrow crack, I saw them. Ryan sat close to Sophia on the couch, his hand resting lightly on hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned toward him, her smile soft, her eyes glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. "I can't keep pretending, Sophia," Ryan whispered. Her reply was quiet but lethal. "Neither can I." And then it happened. A kiss. Slow, deliberate, unashamed. My world shattered. I stumbled back, hand over my mouth to stop the sob that clawed its way up my throat. The walls of the house seemed to close in, the shadows mocking me. My husband, my mother. The two people who were supposed to love me the most had found love in each other instead. I wanted to burst into the room, scream until the house fell down. But I couldn't. My legs felt like stone, my body frozen in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. So I turned, walked back to my room, and curled into myself like a child. My tears drowned the pillow, each one carrying the weight of a truth I had prayed I'd never know. History warns us that betrayal rarely hides forever. It always demands revelation, and on that stormy night, revelation came for me. The marriage I thought was strong, the family I believed was unshakable, crumbled in a single kiss shared between my husband and my mother. It was no longer suspicion. It was discovery, and there was no going back. History shows us that truth, once discovered, demands to be spoken. Silence only feeds betrayal. And so, though fear clawed at my throat, I chose to face them. The morning after that stormy night, I walked into the kitchen with eyes that had cried themselves dry. Ryan sat at the table sipping coffee, his expression calm, almost careless. My mother, Sophia, stood by the sink, humming softly as if the world hadn't shifted on its axis just hours before. I looked at them both, my hands trembling, my heart a storm of fury and grief, and I said the words that set fire to everything. I know. The sound of those two words shattered the room. Sophia froze, her humming dying on her lips. Ryan's cup clinked against the table as his grip faltered. I saw you, I continued, my voice sharp but shaking. Last night, on the couch. You kissed him, Mom, and you... I turned to Ryan, fury burning my throat. You let it happen. You wanted it. For a moment, silence swallowed us all. Then Sophia stepped forward, tears already welling. Elena, listen. No! I snapped, my voice rising. Don't you dare tell me to listen. You're my mother! He's my husband. Do you have any idea what you've done? Ryan stood, his face pale but his jaw set. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he muttered. Supposed to happen? I repeated, choking on the words. So you admit it? You admit you love her? His silence was my answer. Sophia wept, her voice breaking. I didn't want this, Elena. I swear I didn't. But Ryan, he makes me feel alive again. After your father, I cut her off with a scream that rattled my own bones. Stop. Don't you dare use Dad's death as an excuse to steal my husband. The confrontation spiraled into chaos. My tears turned to sobs, Ryan's face twisted in guilt. Sophia's pleas rang hollow. The walls that had once held laughter now echoed with betrayal. And then, as if the universe wanted another witness, my aunt walked in. She had keys to the house and often visited unannounced. She saw me sobbing, Ryan standing stiff, Sophia crumpled against the counter. In a single moment she understood. Oh my God, she whispered, her face pale with horror. Sophia, what have you done? Word spread quickly after that. Relatives whispered. Neighbors stared. Friends stopped calling. Betrayal doesn't stay private. It poisons everything it touches. I turned to Ryan, my voice hoarse but clear. I want a divorce. Today, tomorrow, I don't care. But you will never be my husband again. His face broke, but he didn't argue. He only lowered his head, as though shame itself had crushed him. Then I looked at Sophia, my mother, my betrayer. You're dead to me. Her sobs filled the room, but I felt nothing. No pity, no love, only ashes where family used to live. In history, kingdoms fall when loyalty is traded for desire. Families fall the same way. That morning, in that kitchen, I didn't just lose a husband. I didn't just lose a mother. I lost the illusion that love always protects. The truth was out. The confrontation complete, and nothing would ever be the same again. History tells us that betrayal leaves ruins in its wake, but ruins are also where survival begins. After the confrontation, I had nothing left to protect, nothing left to pretend. All that remained was the path forward, paved with shards of the life I once believed was mine. The divorce papers came quickly. Ryan didn't fight them. He barely spoke at all. His signature was messy, hurried, as though he wanted the shame cut clean from his life. But shame doesn't disappear with ink. We had no children, no property battles, no drawn-out hearings. Just a swift legal severing of something that had already died long before. When I walked out of that courthouse, clutching the papers, I felt two things at once. Grief and freedom. Sophia stayed with him. That was her choice. The mother who once held me as a child, now holding the man who had vowed to cherish me. They didn't marry, not right away, but they lived together. It was the final twist of the knife, to see them build a life from the ashes of mine. Family gatherings dissolved. Relatives took sides. Some called me brave, others whispered pity. But everyone agreed on one thing: the scandal would stain us forever. Sophia tried to reach out once. She came to my apartment with tears and apologies, begging me to understand that love chooses its own path. I shut the door in her face. For the first time in my life, I chose myself over her. The first months were agony. Nights stretched endlessly, the silence of my bed a cruel reminder. But slowly, I began to reclaim pieces of myself. I joined a local writing group, spilling my pain into words. I ran at dawn, letting the rhythm of my footsteps pound out the bitterness. I traveled, short trips at first, then longer ones, rediscovering the world without Ryan, without Sophia, without betrayal clouding my vision. Each act of self-rebuilding was a declaration. You took my marriage. You took my mother, but you did not take me. In studying history, we learn that betrayal is not new. Empires collapse when leaders falter. Alliances crumble when trust is broken. My life was no empire, but the lesson was the same. Betrayal comes not from strangers at the gate, but from those already inside the walls. Sophia and Ryan proved that. And though their story became one of whispered scandal, mine became one of resilience. Do I still hurt? Yes. Some nights I dream of the family I lost, the husband who once promised forever, the mother who once was my safe place. But pain does not define me anymore. I carry scars, but I also carry strength. And if history remembers me at all, it will not be as the woman destroyed by betrayal, but as the woman who stood, who survived, and who wrote her own ending. So here's the truth, simple and final. She found out her husband loved her mother more. It broke her heart. It broke her family. But it did not break her. And that is the lesson this story leaves behind.